This is my path, my journey. I'm willing to explain it all to you guys. No holding back anything. I just hope you're ready for the experience, and I just hope you can handle it. What's going on, guys? So, I want to make this video about some, let's call this psychedelic science. So, I've been researching quantum physics and quantum mechanics and dimensions and, you know, all that for years now. And realistically, the science that I've been looking up, it's like science is evolving. And I also keep up to date with like normal, you know, just natural science, like, or other science, like, you know, I don't know, like even listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson, things like that. But there was this one video I was watching about dimensions. It was a YouTube channel that was kind of dedicated on like trying to explain dimensions, you know, the quantum physics and dimensions and all this. It was getting into the first dimension, explaining it, second, third, fourth, fifth, you know, and so forth and so on. So as he was explaining the dimensions, I was putting together like this idea basically, and this idea was that these dimensions that, you know, it seems that the odd numbers are the ones that beings might be able to exist in. Now, I obviously don't have any fucking mathematical or science background besides personal experiences with psychedelics and research that I've done, you know, through the internet. But what I'm really trying to I guess say is that this idea that I had from watching this video was that we're in the third dimension. There are scientists that believe, most scientists believe that the fourth dimension is time. Yes and no. I slightly agree and I slightly disagree. And this is why. I think science as a whole doesn't understand time, and I think we as a whole don't understand what time really is. You can't. So, for example, the issue is that science doesn't look at the mind as much, you know, because it's like you can talk about other dimensions. That they're open to talk about dimensions, but then it's like, okay, well, what about a dream? They say, oh, the dream's all in your head. Well, is that another dimension? I mean, if you're saying time is another dimension, why wouldn't a completely different reality that you're living in your head be another dimension? I don't know. It's on another wavelength. It's different than this reality. And the same thing for psychedelic experiences. A lot of scientists, you know, discredit psychedelic experiences because it's the type of experience that it's the same thing with near-death experiences. It's the same thing. It's basically, I had this experience, I seen this, and this happened to me. And it's like with science, that doesn't really go far because it's like you got no evidence. All you have is your word and your experience and what you've been through, and you've seen it. You didn't document it. You didn't do any scientific like measurements or scientific, you know, experiments or you know. So science will discredit a lot of these things. But I personally think that. So my first psychedelic experience was with salvia. So I smoked salvia, and I smoked a lot my first time. And the first time I ever did it, I was in this chair, and basically the chair duplicated, and I split up with the chair, and I was splitting. And basically it was just like I was like spread out at a certain like angle, like this 90-degree angle or like weird like whatever angle, and then like kind of just moving up with the, you know, as I'm duplicating, and then there was like an infinite amount of me up that way and an infinite amount of me down. But that made me question reality as a whole of dimensions, you know, like, because I remember trying to come back and thinking to myself, which me was the me now? And that kind of made me think of the multiverse reality. Like, and basically that, I was like, which me is my reality. I don't want to go back to a reality that's not mine. So it was, I don't know. But on top of that, the splitting up thing, and also when you're tripping, you trail. Everyone knows about the trailing, right? When it's like you move your hand and you can kind of see it stacked up. Everyone knows the trailing thing. I think that is you literally seeing time. I think the third dimension is possibly time itself. Like, for example, we're inside of time, I think. I think the third dimension is, so a lot of kids nowadays wouldn't know what this is, but there's these old flip books that they used to have that was basically like a cartoon, a moving picture, and you would have a book, and it would be a thin book, and then you'd like, I wish I had a book next to me, but you kind of get the corner of the book, and then you kind of like slowly, or like kind of fastly flip through it, and then it would create a moving picture. I think that's what reality is like. I think that's the third dimension. I think we are in this almost like time thing where time is the frames all put together, but from possibly the fifth dimension you could possibly look at those frames, or even the fourth dimension, look at those frames. But I feel like the fourth dimension you might be stuck, because I feel like I said, I think that the third dimension, we can live in the third dimension. I think we can live in the fifth dimension. I think we can live in the seventh dimension. I think we can live in the ninth dimension. I think we can live in the, so forth and so on. It's just, I think there's something about the odd numbers that adds a certain form, so intelligent life form can form a form in that dimension. For example, a lot of people who have smoked DMT or done ayahuasca, even sometimes on mushrooms, with deep experience with mushrooms, a lot of people have talked about light beings that they've seen. A lot of people have explained gesture beings and all these different beings and all these different, whatever, and they all, come back, trying to explain the same thing. They're just all different people, so they're explaining it in their own way. But it's like, I think that there's definitely something to the fact that these people are coming back and explaining the same thing, because I think that that is another dimension. I think that I call it the light dimension, DMT space. There's many things you can call it, but I really think that what it is possibly the fifth dimension and more. It could be more dimensions past that, but because I think you could travel dimensions while you're in that dimension. But I think in that dimension, though, how this reality, the third dimension, is based off of matter and atoms, right? Hydrogen, carbon, the basic building blocks of life. Well, our form of life, the third dimensional form of life. I think that in the fifth dimension, the basic building block of life is light. Light. I think that light is the basic building block of life in that dimension. A lot of people, especially you can, there is some evidence scientifically documented, and not necessarily evidence, but, people explaining what happened, with Rick Strassman's, research that he did, but everything in that place is made of light, you know what I mean? Like, everything in that dimension, in that reality, is made of light. And I think that it's made of light like everything in this reality is made of matter and atoms. It's just in the fifth dimension, I think photons, light photons, are what reality is created from in that, sense. Where the buildings, the people, the things, everything is made of light photons, not matter and atoms. Now, I think that science needs to, I made this video recently about science. I've just been on this kick with science because I've been doing some scientific research with things, trying to understand quantum physics, trying to understand molecules, trying to understand a bunch of things, and, just, I don't know. I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to, learn and then express what I learn and express my thoughts and, my point of view and why I think, the way I think, because I've had a lot of experiences that have led me to this, because I have no scientific background, but yet, people would think that I do, I don't know. I just don't, I think there's a difference between, I think there's many types of science is the issue, because quantum physics is different than the old science, and there's many different types of scientists, and there's, I think science as a whole is evolving, I think reality as a whole is evolving, but I think psychedelic science is becoming a thing because I think it's an undiscovered science. I think that the issue is that there's no way to measure, when you're inside another dimension, and until we figure out a way to be able to see what somebody's seeing when they're dreaming. Now, if you could see what they're seeing when they're dreaming, then you can see what they're seeing when they're on DMT, when they're in that other dimension. Now, if you can get a recording, if you can somehow record what you're seeing in their dreams, then you can somehow record their experience and then be able to somehow solidify it a little more and then start to actually, whatever. But I think at that point, if that was to ever happen, I think that would change reality as a whole, because, if you could record the DMT experience and show it to somebody, it would be mind-blowing to them just from watching it, It's like, holy fuck, dude. Like, I think it might be different, too. I think, it's possible the light beings would know, so they would speak through the thing, a different way. I don't know. It's just, who knows what could happen. Reality is coming to a complete change, because we think that the scientific boom, the technological boom, is just with technology, AI, AR, VR, going to Mars, terraforming Mars, doing all that. Like, no, it's much deeper than that, because the human mind is going to evolve. It's that reality as itself, the understanding of what we think reality is going to change as well. We think right now reality is just this. Eventually other dimensions will probably be just the norm. Of course other dimensions exist. Maybe, teleportation, it's like, maybe, you can figure out a way to teleport, and then one day teleportation will just be like, oh yeah, of course, we can teleport. Like, what do you mean? Of course other dimensions exist. Of course there's light beings in other dimensions. And, with some of that knowledge, the shamans already are like that. The shamans have been like that for years. For thousands of years, the shamans have already been like, of course there's other dimensions, of course this is the way it is, of course, they just, it's common knowledge to them. And it's because I think that these plants, the planet itself, is a higher intelligent being, and I feel like we have to be very self-centered to think to ourselves that us as small little ants on top of the planet are conscious, but the planet itself isn't conscious. I think that is just, I don't know, not being observant. Because if you observe the planet, it's very conscious. It had to be conscious to create us. It has to be intelligent to be created in its mathematical design and use math to create, the universe. Sacred geometry. And it's not just the planet, but I just think that science is going to come to a point where, science will basically prove the existence of God. Science will prove the existence of a higher, of something, an intelligence. There has to be an intelligent designer to the reality we're in. I've seen this argument, where they're talking about there has to be, just like you wouldn't have a 400-page chapter book, in front of you with pictures in it and illustrations as well, not just chapters, but great illustrations and all this other shit. And you wouldn't think to yourself that book made itself without an intelligent designer. And that was basically the argument, to atheists, about, is there a God? But I'm not trying to get off topic, but I'm kind of still, what I'm trying to just explain is that reality is about to drastically change, and yeah. But I'm gonna get going though, so I'll see you guys in the next video.